the Peter Schiff School of Advanced Economics.
Twice the education of a Harvard MBA.
For 1/168,000th the cost.
Well, we're talking about economic stupidity. First, we were talking about Japan, but we might as well bring it back home. And I think that's a pretty good segue to introduce Paul Krugman, who was on television. In fact, he was on quite a bit over the weekend. I saw him a few times. But I want to play a little bit of Paul Krugman on PBS. This is from Friday. And first, let me just lay a little of the groundwork. I'll let Krugman lay it out himself, though. He's going on and telling the show or the audience just how bad things really are in America. I mean, things are really, really bad. And, of course, after all these years and years of Keynesian stimulus, you'd think it'd be great. But anyway, Paul Krugman is discussing how bad things are. So listen to what he has to say. First, it's cut number 4.
The other thing I think I want to say here is that we have in some ways made things more civilized, but also more invisible. Somebody said that food stamps are the soup kitchens of the modern depression. That there are a lot of people who would be standing in line to get that soup, who are instead, and it's a good thing, who are instead getting, I guess it's now called SNAP, Supplementary Nutritional Assistance Program, but who are getting those debit cards and are getting essential foodstuffs. And they're at the grocery store and they look like anybody else, but the fact of the matter is they are still as desperate. They're getting by day to day with the aid of a trickle of government aid, just like the people who were standing in line at the soup kitchens in the 30s, but they're not visible.
Of course, what Paul Krugman doesn't understand is the connection between the welfare state that he advocates and the poverty that he opposes. It's the very existence of the welfare state, the dependency that it breeds, the moral hazards, the perverse incentives, and the facts that the country has to be taxed to subsidize it. That's why we're getting poorer. It's because of the very programs that he thinks are so great is one of the reasons that we're so poor. People depend on government because government is there. If government wasn't there, they would depend on themselves. They would be self-reliant. They would have jobs. They would earn more money. It's the government programs that he thinks are so great that are actually causing the problem that he is discussing. Here's a little bit more on how bad it is, according to Krugman. Here, cut number 5.
The amount of damage that's being done is enormous. The amount of suffering of people is enormous. And
I agree.
If it isn't out there visible on the streets, if it's dispersed across suburban, if you see a house with a for sale sign that's been sitting there for a while, you may not know the story about the family that was driven from its house because the one or both spouses
because
lost
of government loans,
others, or
because of the Fed, because of Fannie and Freddie.
But it's a real story all the same, and there's lots of that going around, and none of this needs to be happening.
Yeah, none of it needs to be happening, but it's all happening because of guys like Paul Krugman. He says there's enormous amount of damage being done. He's right, by the government, by advocates of the programs that he himself advocates. It's the big government. But here's the thing. Now Krugman starts to talk about what we should do about it. Now you would think he's talking about there's all these poverty. People are poor. Well, why are people poor? Because they don't have enough stuff, right? People, you're poor because you need things and you don't have them. You don't have adequate food, adequate housing, medical care. So how do you solve the problem of poverty? Well, simple. You need more stuff. If the poor people had a lot of stuff, they wouldn't be poor. So how do you get more stuff? You got to produce it. You need more factories. You need more machines. You need more skilled labor. So where does all this come from? It comes from underconsumption, from savings, from an absence of government, free market incentives, right? We need to produce more. We need to work harder. We need to make more stuff so the poor people can afford more stuff because prices will come down, productivity will go up. So, and we know how to create wealth. We know how to create consumer goods. But how does Paul Krugman think you create wealth? Well, let's let the man speak for himself. Cut number 6.
You argue that this could actually be solved in 2 years.
That's right, and that's based on That's not a number plucked out of thin air. That's a guess at how long it would take to get a serious spending program going. And we can actually make a lot of difference in it even quicker than that, because the fact of the matter is, far from having an effective job creation program, we've actually been pulling back. We've seen state and local governments lay off hundreds of thousands of school teachers. We've seen public investment in basic stuff like road repair cut way back. If we just went back to normal rates of filling potholes and normal rates of employment of school teachers, that could be done in months.
That's it. We can solve all this problem. All the problems that he just went over, the poverty, the hunger, how bad it is, it can all be solved if we hire more teachers and fill more potholes. That's it. That's all we need. And he said the only reason it's going to take 2 years is because that's how long it's going to take to get a serious spending program through Congress, meaning that we could do the whole thing in 2 minutes if it wasn't for Congress. I mean, all we have to do is hire teachers. All we have to do is print money. So according to Paul Krugman, this was what we need to grow the economy. The federal government should just print trillions of dollars and give it to the cities and states on the condition that they hire more teachers. How about if we just give every student a private tutor, right? Class size is reduced to 1. That way we need to hire millions of teachers. So we take every person who's unemployed and we make them a teacher. Well, I guess, no, half of them we make teachers and the other half we have filling potholes. And in case there aren't enough potholes to fill, we'll take some of the people who we're going to hire to fill potholes, and we'll put them in charge of creating potholes so that the other people can fill them. So we'll print all this money, and we'll hire all these teachers, and then we're supposed to have no poverty? This is the Nobel laureate? This is what it takes to win a Nobel Prize. So you study the problem with the U.S. economy, and the conclusion is, let's print money so we can hire teachers and fill potholes. Now, how is that going to create anything for the poor? See, if you have this situation where you have a lot of poor people that don't have enough stuff, they can't afford to buy the things that they need, how is printing money to give everybody a tutor going to make a difference? How is that going to put more food on anyone's table? Are those teachers going to are they going to farm anything? Are they going to make anything that the poor people need? Are they going to produce a product that the poor need? What about the potholes? How is filling potholes going to end poverty? How is it going to produce one thing? This is nonsense. You know, and of course, this is supposedly the best and the brightest that we got. He's on television every week. He's on the New York Times. This is like the major economic thinker of our time. And of course, he has so much influence that the people in Japan are being fooled into believing the stuff that Krugman says. Hey, it must be right. Printing money must help your economy, so let's print money over here. I mean, what is was it Mugabe? Is that how you pronounce his name over in Zimbabwe? He must be thinking, where did I go wrong? I printed trillions. Why didn't it work? What's going on here? I did everything Paul Krugman said I should do. We printed all this money. We got zillions. You guys are talking about $1 trillion coins. Everybody's got $1 trillion bills. Why isn't the economy growing? Why doesn't it work? You know, and if what Paul Krugman is saying is true, it's easy. Everybody ought to do it. You know, why doesn't Greece just do that? Why don't they just, because the problem is they already did that. That's why they're broke. You see, the countries in Europe that are broke got broke because they did exactly what Paul Krugman thinks they should do. Yet he can never see that. No matter how many times everything he believes in fails, all he can think of is, we just need more of it and it will work. But they can't connect the dots. I mean, maybe the only way you can get a Nobel Prize is to be that numb. I mean, is it maybe, you know, I guess if there were a Nobel Prize in stupidity, they wouldn't be smart enough to award it to Paul Krugman. I always thought that he should get it. But I'd love to be able to debate Paul Krugman on this topic. I'd love to ask him flat out, you know, how is this possibly going to work? But you know what? Maybe we ought to do it just to shut the guy up. Why don't we just do it? Why don't we just print the money, hire these teachers, fill these potholes, and then look at the disaster that is created, and then ask Paul Krugman, what now? We got more. 855-4-SCHIFF is the number to call. We'll be right back.